Good afternoon. Um, Tomorrow night, we will have a presidential debate in Philadelphia with, on the Democratic side, of course, everybody knows, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now the Democratic nominee against really the former president Donald Trump. Now, this debate is on the heels of what was the most consequential debate probably in U.S. presidential history, June 27th of this year, in which, because of the poor performance by Joe Biden and really a lot of pressure within his own party, we saw the unprecedented decision of a presidential incumbent president who had really secured a nomination of the party to basically step aside. And so, this debate definitely is going to have a much bigger audience than the debate in June. After Labor Day, people tend to pay attention more attention to politics. So, obviously, for Vice President Harris, this is going to be really the biggest stage that she has been on, and so this represents a significant opportunity for her to demonstrate that, number one, that she could do what Joe Biden was unable to do in the June debate, and that is to make the cogent argument against Donald Trump, and so so from the Democratic side, there's this whole prosecutor versus the quote-unquote felon narrative, and so there are obviously all these expectations based upon her previous performances, in other stages where she was successful prosecutor, where she's interrogated Trump administration officials in hearings, that she can show those same chops on the presidential debate stage. But also the challenge will also be to do it in a way that people are comfortable with her. In some ways, this is a job interview, and people are asking the question. Some people are asking the question: am I comfortable with this person basically in my living room for the next 4 years? And so that's some of what the dynamic of the debate is for her. Now, in part because of some of her skills, it's from a Democratic standpoint, it would be very important for her not to underestimate Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a performer, and despite there have been some concerns about Donald Trump, particularly in recent months. He has seemed to be in a tailspin in some ways because he's lamenting the fact that he spent 20 months running against Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden is no longer the candidate, and so he's in some way has struggled to figure out a way to run his campaign. And it's actually raised some concerns actually with people with his own party about the kind of campaign that he's running. And also there have been times when he's, quite frankly, has not seemed to be particularly coherent. And that has also raised concerns among many people who have been watching him. But it's also important that he is a media personality, and he is, he's used to the cameras and the spotlight, and so it'll also be interesting to see how he performs in this setting. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot at stake, really, in many ways for both candidates, because this race, as Jim indicated, is it's close, and polling, if you read a lot of polling, this race is very close. It's kind of hard to put too much stock into polling to some degree, because polling has been off in the last cycles in many cases, but it's safe to say that this still is a close race in many ways. So there's a lot at stake for both sides, and so obviously interesting to see what happens. Obviously, locally, we have a contested race for mayor president. A few days ago, BRAC, Baton Rouge Area Chamber, put out a poll that seems to indicate that this race is headed for a runoff. Mayor Broom was at 29%, and former Representative Ted James and Coach Sid Everett were actually tied at 23%, and I think Mr. Myers was at 3%. That he was because he's the only other candidate that qualified for the debate, which is now appears to be going to be postponed because of concerns about the weather. That suggests at least two things to me. Now, number one, obviously this race looks like it's going to be headed to a runoff, and of course, the way we do elections in Louisiana, our primary election is actually the general election of everybody else. So we're looking at a December runoff, and which probably will be less turnout than a November runoff, which could which could have implications depending on who's in that race. Also, it also suggests to me that there's some real concern for I would argue that it's a straight analysis. There's some real concern for the mayor. If you're a two-term incumbent and you're at 29%, I think that's a problem. That suggests vulnerability. She's not a new commodity. She won her first race in 1987. I was a college student at that point. To be a two-term incumbent and at 29% in the poll, that's a problem, and that suggests some vulnerability in this race. If the race for second, remains close, and we got a few weeks to go, and if Mr. Myers stays in the race, a few percentage points may make a big difference between who makes the runoff and who doesn't. But I think we're looking at potential for a race for the ages. As if we have a runoff between Sharon Broom and Ted James, it is a psychological blow of some degree to have the state, the Baton Democratic Party to endorse her opponent as opposed to her. But I also think that we can't assume necessarily because the turnout will be an issue in the runoff, and an issue in the runoff, and so that's also going to affect that. It would seem that she would have the advantage against an Edwards in a runoff, but again turnout, but turnout is going to be an issue because you won't have presidential race on the ballot. So I'm going to stop here. My brief comments here, and I'm going to step aside and allow my colleague here, Mr. Glasper, to give me his take on these two races. Mr. Glasper.
Thank you. Look, thank you, Dr. Sanders. Look, I want to say I'm so glad I played basketball with political science up there, because I may have been really tough. I thought I was pretty good, but this young man has been at Southern for a number of years and done an excellent job. Look, I happen to be a former elected official in this town and understood politics from within. And because of my disdain for gambling, I was able to discern that the Democratic Party did no longer want Darrell Glasper in their party, and they told me so. So I want everybody to know, and Dr. Samuels, one of the things that I did as an elected official was try every day to improve the African American community that needed representation and that needed problems solved. And to create a problem for the people that I represented was not in my forte. So I want people to say, yes, I was a Democrat, but thank God that the Democratic Party opened my eyes up in a meeting and it told me they would never ever support me for anything. So I want people to know that about me. Now, as an African American in America, and a Republican, you know, sometimes we face criticism for our beliefs and how we see things different than other people in our community. It has always been from day one the elephant in the room. I did not just go to the Republican Party to be a part of the party. I was the minority coordinator in my first year elected as a Republican because I saw issues. I didn't see personalities. I didn't see all the other things. I saw issues, and issues affect people. Now, there are a number of races, and I want to start by saying, first of all, I have a Republican colleague, Mr. Elwood Guillory, is running for the United States Congress. He's in a race with Cleo Fields, and I want to critique that race a little bit. I've been around a long time. I think I have a little insight in how these things work. So you have the only Republican candidate endorsed by all the Republicans in the state, the Republican Central Committee, and then all of the local PECs. So he's going to be a very formidable candidate. And then on the other hand, you have Cleo Fields, who is a seasoned politician. I think he's one of the better politicians of our times. He's young, he's dynamic, he always had ideas, but he had energy. And he has the ability to speak. He's an attorney, and he's a Southern grad. And so we put out really good candidates. So you have two very formidable candidates in that race, and then you have a number of other people. And I think that race is going to go to a runoff because I think it's 47 Republican and white, and then 53 African American. It was a created district that went to court. And most people said it was gerrymandered all over the state, but it is what it is. I think either the Supreme Court or Congress ruled that it was something that they could work with. And when you drop down to the mayor's race, Dr. Samuel was right. When you have a two-time incumbent, and that incumbent is below 30, now, I've always said, and I've done a lot of polls, probably written a lot of polls with the Republican Party. They have a very good infrastructure and very solid minds, is who was doing the polling, what the questions was asked. So you have to also take into consideration exactly what dynamics was the questions asked. But for an incumbent, it's problematic. Ted James is dynamic, young state representative. He's a formidable candidate. And then you have the elephant in the room. Coach Sid Evans got in late. Didn't have a whole lot of money. I think a whole lot of Republicans in this town, they may have buyer's remorse because Coach Sid Edwards has crossover appeal, and don't let anybody tell you anything else different. The man has been in different parts of this community, and so the entire East Baton Rouge Parish can vote in this mayoral election, and I see it the same way. I think it's going to be a runoff, and I tell you why. The numbers indicated. You have 140,000 whites, you have 127,000 African Americans, and you have 18,000 others. I don't see a first primary victory in that race. So I think it's going to go to a runoff. Now, let's talk about really the elephant in the room here, the one that you all want to talk about, the one that's going to shape this country for many years to come, and that is the presidential race. I can stand before you all today and say it unapologetically that we in this country have no other choice. Because when you look at the issues and not personalities, all of my friends around the country, and I'm going to tell you around the country, are saying to me that are not Republicans, man, don't do this again. Don't commit political suicide. Because of this man's background, his character, and you know the answer. What we don't realize that Donald Trump is not coming to your house tonight, or tomorrow, or next week. Kamala Harris is not coming to your house tomorrow or tonight. She's not going to call you on the telephone and be your friend. The policies that they put in place is going to affect everyone in this country. The economic policies is clear as a bell. Everything's on the rise. When you're talking about open borders, they don't open up the White House. They don't open up California. The governor of California don't open up the governor's mansion and let anybody just walk in. They're walking in our country. And then I passed out some information that's real important to me. As African Americans in this country, you've got one of the toughest decisions to make that you will ever make in your life. Because you will be the determining factor on this race because it's so close. And don't let anybody fool you. You will be the determining factor who will be in the White House for the next 4 years. And let me tell you why. Because the issues that are on the table right now are the issues that are going to affect you for the next 8 to 10 to 15 years. Because if we don't close our borders, if we don't fix our economy, if you don't do anything about crime, we don't manufacture drugs, drugs are coming in the country, and where are they going? They're going into the minority communities. If we don't stop giving away money in this country, in the trillions of dollars, we're going to find ourselves as like a third world country. We're going to be broke. If we don't do something about both sides, the Republican and Democrat Party working together to solve people's problems, then we'll never come out of this. I've always said, and I want to say this, and I'll be stand here and ask any questions, is that this is very personal with me because as an individual who started in politics in my 30s, I'm 71 years of age. I've seen it all. I've seen all the tricks and all of the minutiae that go around with politics. When the Democratic Party get in trouble, the first thing they do, they show you somebody who look like you, who talk like you, who's supposed to be for you. But guess what? The issues never change in your favor. So I want to say this, we will stop here and we'll ask some questions, and you can ask any question, I'll be willing to answer it. And I want to tell you, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you, but this race for president is one of the most crucial races that we'll ever face in our lifetime.
Do ask that if you ask questions, you be a member of the media or a member of the press club, and we'll give each of the guests a chance to answer. And I'll start with the first one. In the country, and certainly in East Baton Rouge Parish, there's a huge gap when it comes to race and to gender in voting. And it looks as though that about 90% of the white males in Louisiana will vote for Donald Trump. And that's not an exaggerated figure. And about 97, 98% of African American females will vote for Kamala Harris. And that's not something that's new. In fact, our state has voted similarly 4 straight times for president, going back to John McCain and Barack Obama. All 64 parishes have voted exactly the same way 4 straight cycles. But as far as race and gender, how does that compute as to why it's the case in Louisiana and nationally? And in East Baton Rouge Parish, how will those factors, with a heavy turnout on November 5th, affect the mayoral election? And since Albert went first last time, we'll start with Darrell and then have Albert respond.
Very briefly, the turnout's going to be through the ceiling because of the sugar high, the switch. Never in the history of this country have a presidential candidate jumped out of the race and put in not only an African American at the top of the ticket, but a female. So this turnout is going to be tremendous, and I think the ramifications of the turnout in the presidential race is going to have a great effect on the mayor's race, because I think women normally, let's say 70, 80% of them will vote for Sharon Westenbroom because she is a female, she is an incumbent, and I think it's going to trickle down in her favor on election night.
I think the question was, and there is a strong relationship in many ways between race and partisanship. So right, we don't. It's not. It's not. In some ways, it's not surprising, and it's not. And oftentimes, oftentimes, race is a proxy for different views about the role of government. And so typically, African Americans have a different view about the role of government, particularly as it relates to intervening in the economy and the belief that the government can have a positive effect on people's lives. That is where so oftentimes race and partisanship in that ways are linked in those ways, and so Democratic, and so that's why in many ways African Americans, and particularly African American women are the most loyal constituency within the Democratic Party. 94% of African American women voted for Hillary Clinton, so that was that, and so it's likely to be 98, 99% now. With an African American on the ticket. So that's expectation. Why would we expect that to be the case? Again, we anticipate there's going to be a big turnout in the race, in the mayoral race as a result of the presidential race, but it's still going to be a runoff unless something radically changes between now and November 5th. It's less going to be a runoff, and the only question is which two candidates are going to make the runoff.
Any questions from members or media?
Just comparing this year's mayor's race to the last mayor's race, what do you think Republicans' chances are of winning this one?
Well, you have Republicans in 22 races parish-wide. So the myth about a Republican can't become mayor of East Baton Rouge Parish is just it is who the candidate is and what the candidate issues are. And I think that when you have a parish that sees that there's a problem and some things need to change, and you have a person with the crossover appeal. Coach has coached at Central. He's coached at Redemption. He's coached at Catholic High. He's coached at now he's coaching in the inner city. He sees it. So I think that there's a path for a person in the runoff. Now, with the numbers, and Dr. Samuel's right. Race does play a part. I just don't see Republicans going to the polls and voting for a Donald Trump at the top of a ticket and then vote for either of the candidates, and I don't care how much money they have.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this. East Baton Rouge Parish has become kind of like a blue dot in a ruby red state. However, East Baton Rouge Parish has leaned Democratic, but it's not overwhelmingly Democratic. So even those races, the races that some of the races refer to, where black candidates, like Kip Holden races, some of Sharon Russell races, the Democratic won, but I'm telling you, they didn't win overwhelmingly. So it's not out of the realm. It depends on who makes the runoff. Now, what will be interesting to see what happens as we lead up to election day. As oftentimes the closer we get to an election day, and this, candidates start jockeying, and if it gets nasty, as people, negative campaigning, somebody has to make the runoff. And so you got to make the case for why somebody else should not be there. And so there is a path quite frankly, for the Republican, if the two Democratic candidates go after each other, and perhaps, perhaps there's some resentment from that. And can they put that so it's not a given that they're able to put that coalition back together if one of those candidates makes the runoff and the other doesn't. So my point is that there is a path for a Republican, because even though this is a Democratic majority parish, it's not overwhelmingly Democratic. So a Republican can be competitive.
I guess with that said, just a quick follow-up, but if it does end up with a runoff with Mr. Edwards as the Republican candidate, which of the Democratic candidates do you think Republicans would have a better chance of beating?
Well, it doesn't make a difference, because I think you're looking at the numbers. Just like you're going to have crossover appeal on either side. And that's my opinion. Dr. Samuels may disagree, but you have to have crossover appeal because of the issues that are facing the parish right now. And I want to say this, and nothing to anybody, but since 2025, East Baton Rouge Parish has been in the hands of African American leadership. And you look at the inner city, and you look at North Baton Rouge, and see how it has diminished over 19 years. If my math right, I went to Southern Doc. But I think look, the issue is going to play a factor. We're not looking at race anymore. We're looking at who is going to help us to become a better parish and take care of our problems.
Two things. I'm going to take exception to that last remark about that last remark, because it's not like these problems that we have just happened when we had black folks in charge of City Hall. So I'm going to take exception to this argument, to this. Typically, what has happened in a lot of cities is oftentimes when blacks finally become the mayors of towns, precisely at the historical moment when whites leave the city and take the tax base with them, and then you're left with the problems. And the question is, and then we're blamed for not being able to fix the problems that they left behind. So I'm going to take exception to this argument that it's somehow all these problems happened just when the black folks took charge. Now, as far as who has the rank, that it's kind of really hard. In some ways, it's kind of hard to say. It'd be two different type of campaigns. I would say that. Certainly, Mr. Edwards is running an outsider campaign. I am not the politician. He's kind of running against the status quo, and so in a way that's a race that's tailor made in some ways to run against Sharon Wilson Broome, who is, like I said, has been in office since 1987. So it would be two different types of campaigns. It's a little trickier running in some ways running against Ted James, because in some ways there's a generational difference between Representative James and with Broome. In some ways, he's kind of a fresh face, even though he's been around for a little while. So I guess I say it's in many ways their policies in many ways are actually quite similar in many ways. But the strategies may change a little bit because of who you're running against.
Okay. Just can I respond just one second? Look, Doc, I have great respect for Doc, but let me say this to you. And look, sometimes when we talk about ourselves, it's a little heated conversation. But I want to say this to you. I should be the chairman of F&E, Finance and Executive. That budget did not change. It's $1.1 billion. And if you don't look at the services being rendered to the North Baton Rouge of this town and the inner cities, because when I served, we didn't have the blight that we have. We didn't have the road condition that we had. So the money was there, but where were the services? So I'm saying, If you going to be elected official and be an African American, well, take care of your community.
Well, mayors who have sought third terms in Baton Rouge usually have done very well. Kip Holden won going away, as did Tom Ed McHugh in modern time. And Sharon Weston Broome is running with vigorous competition on each side of her. And Dr. Samuels, you know Ted James was a huge supporter of Sharon Weston Broome. And Mr. Glasper, I know that you're the person who got Sharon Broome into her first race. You're
Sir,
the one who coaxed her into running for the Metro Council, is that correct?
knocked on Woody's door and asked her to run.
Okay. So why is Sharon Weston Broome seeking a third term more vulnerable than Kip Holden was or Tom Ed McHugh? Dr. Samuels?
Well, some of this is the fact that let's just face it. Ted James is James is an exciting, in many ways, an energetic candidate. In a sense, he represents a different generation. So some of that has to do with who you're running against. And she's facing a formidable candidate, and she's also facing a candidate that, quite frankly, who's outraged her. He's got some. He has. I know many of you in the press. You've been following the campaign finance reports, and so he's gonna. So he has. So now that he has the resources to give her a significant run for her money. So I think some of it has to do with the fact that she's running, quite frankly, against a formidable candidate who also has significant backing, and some of that backing is not just from traditional Democratic sources, but also some business, from the business industry and some Republican donors.
Yeah. And Doc is right. I mean, she has a formidable candidate, and he's a tough campaigner. But I want to say this, Doc, in reference to me as an individual. I want you to know, you may not know it, but I sued myself while I was on the city council because I didn't like myself. We couldn't get nothing done, and I won in federal court. So the reason why Sharon is having a problem right now, Ms. Broome, is that people are demanding services for their tax dollars. There's no diminishing in taxes. We're collecting the same amount of taxes. Matter of fact, the last time we passed a bond issue, I was at the helm of getting it passed with a new council, with a new confidence in the community, and the community responded and gave us more money. They gave Breck more money when I was on the Breck board. What has happened to all that money? That's the problem right now. It's only not the problem here, Doc, it's the problem in America. So normally a two-term city, a mayor of a city of this magnitude will have a breeze. And I want to say this, I have great respect for everybody who serves for public office because it's a very difficult job on them as individuals, and it's not all their fault. But it's the fault of if you're going to lead. And if you're going to have $1.1 billion with $734 million up there for you to spend, then it should be equitably distributed around the parish. I've always been like that. If you put something in, you ought to get something out. Yes, sir. Come on, Doc.
Since we have in the Gulf of Mexico something that might interrupt all of this, but assuming we get by, in 2 weeks we're going to have a speaker who's a former Cancer Alley legislator coming before the Baton Rouge Press Club. Is there anything that you believe that he might say that would impact anybody's election or, impact turnout in the Baton Rouge area at all? Or
You want to go with that thing, right?
Honestly, I don't.
In 2 weeks, we're set to have Randall Gaines, who is chairman
Mhm.
You know, of the Democratic Party in the state.
Yeah.
To speak here.
And you think that, and your question is, will anything he says is gonna generate turnout? I don't think so. I think, I think that, I think this is gonna be a high turnout election. Simply because it's the presidential election. To some extent, I know that obviously the concerns of people in that region, in the cancer, the region are very obviously very real. And actually, one of the arguments that was raised by people who were pushing for a more equitable congressional map was specifically because many of those residents are in districts where, quite frankly, they don't get much representation because of the way the map was gerrymandered, and it only allows for really one Democrat can get elected statewide, and so often those people are in districts where they're actually represented by people who are more aligned with the industry and not really concerned about issues of environmental justice.
Doc, hold on just a second. Doc, I'm the Republican in here, and I'm African American. And don't you believe for 1 minute I'm pro-business. That business did not know that they were putting the railroad tracks where they were putting them. They didn't know they put the plants where they were putting them. They put the dumps where they were putting them. They put the jail where they was putting them. And they always targeting minority communities. That is a fact. You can't dispute that. So now you have that. So if you're a business and you're making money, then you clean up your mess. I'm for that. And regardless of what party, that's an issue that affects people's lives. And so that's what we have to get to in this country. We have to get to talking about issues. Is it a bad issue? You letting pollution in the community? Then you making a tremendous amount of money? I'm pro-business because business is going to give you jobs. But clean up your mess. Because you wouldn't do that in your neighborhood. Okay, young man in the back.
Clarify me. There are 4 cities in East Baton Rouge Parish. Is Baton Rouge going to have a mayor's race just for Baton Rouge?
Oh, Lord.
What is the role of that versus the city parish?
You want to take it?
Board?
Come on.
I'm really confused about the role of the city parish vote we're talking about now versus we're going to have a mayor's election also just for Baton Rouge, obviously.
Well, we have a mayor. We have the race is for mayor president,
Right.
and so the mayor of Baton Rouge is also the president of East Baton Rouge Parish. So we sort of have a city parish, sort of a consolidated form of government.
Is that by decree that she is the leader?
That's according to the city charter,
That
and
the charter says the mayor of Baton Rouge is the city.
is also the president of East Baton Rouge Parish. Now, because we also have some additional municipalities municipalities in East Baton Rouge Parish, like Baker has his own mayor, Zachary has his own mayor, Central, and of course now in St. George now is going to become a city, and so they're going to also have their own mayor as well. So they're also, but those voters can also vote in the Baton Rouge mayor's race. Because that person is also, the mayor is also the president of the parish.
Hold up. Once again, I'm gonna make some of my good Republican friends kind of cringe because I don't agree with it. Let me tell you why I don't agree with it. You have Baker, Zachary, Central, now St. George, and they have a right to form their own city. That's what I think. But when you have 2 votes to my 1, I don't care if I'm a Democrat, Republican, or Independent, or a monkey. I'm saying to you is you cannot have 2 votes to my 1. That's not fair. And so that's what we have. It has to be addressed at some point in time. Now, On a Friday morning, I got up, went qualified to run for the mayor of Baker. I'm living in River Bend. I mean, it hit the news. Glasper qualified to run for the mayor of Baker. I was the worst person in the world. You know how long I lasted in that race? About 3 minutes on that stand and gave him my address. It was over with. You out. Now, what makes me out of a race to run for the mayor of a town when you vote for mine and I can't run for yours? That's not fair. That has to be addressed at some point in time. Now, for all the ones that want to be cities, I always tell people, my grandmother told me, don't ever stay where you're not welcome and you're not wanted. So they want it out. So you have to go run your city. And that's what the mayor is struggling with right now. I mean, it's what, 25%, about 70, I think it's what 42 million or 70 million dollars gonna have to go to St. George. We have a problem that we have to solve. And that problem is fairness. I don't care if you Democrat, you Republican, you white or you black or you rich or you poor. Justice is justice. Fairness is fairness. You have a question?
Yes. On the November 5th ballot, the voters of East Baton Rouge will vote on changes to the plan of government. Those changes have been worked on by our Metro Council for several years without any input or very little input from the citizens as what they wanted for the changes to the East Baton Rouge plan of government. All of the changes are under one ballot item. For instance, the Metro Council will be able to give themselves raises. The mayor, he or her, will have his own attorney. Now, there are 12 different items that are all lumped together. I spoke at the Metro Council and asked that meeting and asked that they be divided by item because there's no way that people will be for or against all 12 items. What are your thoughts on that?
It's easy. Vote no. You're done. It's over with.
I agree.
I think John Hightower had his hand up.
What?
Gary, go ahead, please, quickly though.
I got four quickly. This is both of y'all. You know, I've been around it a long time. And
What's your question, Gary?
It will be different this election. I've been trying to.
Gary, what is your question?
Huh?
What is your question?
I'm getting up to it.
No, we need it now. What's your question?
The question is right now is I want to know their thoughts. And it's different with the president's election and the mayor's election. Completely different. What's going to happen? And you got Ted James. And right now, if you ain't paying attention, all the business people's money has been
What's your question? What's your question?
Forget it.
No, hold up. Hold up. I answer your question. Look here. Hey, hold on a second. I think that Sid Edwards, at the last minute, threw a ringer in the race. I think the business community was looking for an alternative to the mayor because of the issues that are facing. And I think that you can't do it. You can't have it both ways. You have 127,000. You have two strong candidates. So that's it. Somebody's gonna make the runoff. Somebody's not. And then after that, you're gonna have a runoff in November.
And nobody's ever won a runoff against Sharon Broom. They get down to the nitty gritty.
Okay, all right. She never lost a race.
Your opinion. Ted James is coming out national party to death.
Okay.
But he's still in this race.
All right.
A lot of his money is coming from business people.
Gary, maybe you'd like to be a guest speaker. That would be fun.
We get him. He's a good man. He's a good man. He's a good man. All right. All right. Look here, Mr. Hightower. Do you have a question? You have a question? If there are no other questions, thank you all very much. Okay.
Abortion has been an underlying theme and a real issue in the last round of national congressional elections. Is it
real deciding factors in the presidential election.
Would you repeat the question?
Abortion,
Abortion. Yes, actually, there's a very good chance that it might. This was one of the reasons. This was actually an issue that was one of the explanations for why the Democrats overperformed in 2022 and why the red wave did not happen. That was predicted. And so at every place in the country where abortion has been on the ballot, the voters have voted that they want, they voted for the pro-choice position. So the pro-life argument, even though it's probably a majority position in the state of Louisiana, it is not a majority position nationally. And there are abortion referendums actually on the ballot in some key states like Florida, like Arizona, that could also have an impact on the race. So I think it could be a very important issue. Now, what we haven't seen in some ways is that abortion is an issue in the presidential race where there are also other issues. We saw in 2022 when it was just a congressional race, but in the presidential race, abortion is one issue among many others. Certainly, the Democrats are making a bet that this is an issue that the country is 70-30 with them, and we saw that was a central part of the Democratic message during the campaign. We saw one friend of mine I've known for years. I know Caitlin Joshua was one of the Democratic speakers at the Democratic convention from Louisiana, talking about her experience. So certainly, this is a bet the Democrats are making, that this is an issue that has crossover appeal, and that it can also potentially sway even Republicans or Republican women who may have think that the Supreme Court went too far in the Dobbs decision. And so it very well could be a decisive issue, but we're going to find out on November 5th.
It's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue with women. Let's not fool ourselves, because I just think that that's what's driving the big push right now. Is going some of the divisive issues. It's just not only abortion; it's a lot of other issues that's going to drive it. But this is going to be a very, very, very tight race. And I want to say this: Donald Trump cannot take this vice president lightly. Donald Trump better talk about issues. He better talk about issues, what's going to change this country. And if it's an issue-oriented campaign, the Republicans win it hands down.